The first rescue flight from Sudan is heading back to Britain. Facing criticism that other countries had got their citizens out of danger more quickly, the government defended its actions, saying hundreds had now left.
Got family members who are still there at the moment, but definitely relieved that my dad is making it back.
Also this lunchtime, jail for the getaway driver who helped the man who murdered 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell flee the scene. The Bank of England backlash. Its chief economist is told he is astonishingly out of touch after saying people need to accept they are poorer. And confusion over the coronation concert at Windsor Castle, why many who thought they were going to see the show didn't actually get tickets.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. The first flight of British evacuees from Sudan is set to land at Stansted Airport in the next hour. The government says hundreds of UK nationals have now been brought to safety via Cyprus. The British military is in a race against time to rescue people from the fighting in the North African country, while a precarious 72-hour ceasefire is in place. The government has faced criticism that other countries have acted more quickly to get their citizens out and that British nationals are having to make their own way to the evacuation flights in the capital, Khartoum. The German foreign minister seemed to criticise the UK's approach, saying Berlin would not leave civilians to their own devices. We'll be live at Stansted, neighbouring Djibouti, with the very latest. First, here's our political correspondent, Romilly Weeks.
For the British nationals on this plane, home and safety is now within reach. Taking off after a short stay in Cyprus, carrying those who spent days trapped in Sudan as fighting raged around them with dwindling food, water and electricity. Among them, 63-year-old Sharif Babakir, who was on the second flight out. His son Ahmed is waiting for him at Stansted.
The last couple of days have been extremely difficult because the fighting was on our street itself. And also the last day or so trying to coordinate my dad getting out of the country and my grandma and my aunt, so it's super difficult.
301 British nationals have been evacuated so far out of 2,000 who've registered with the Foreign Office. That's well below Germany, which today ended its evacuation with over 700 people flown out. The French government has evacuated 538 since the start of their operation. And internationally, Saudi Arabia said a ship carrying 1,687 civilians from more than 50 countries docked there today, the largest evacuation so far.
I don't think it's fair to compare the United Kingdom to other countries. We have a unique situation for historic reasons, for diplomatic reasons. We have a larger number of British people in Sudan than many other countries.
Despite the ceasefire in Khartoum, black smoke evidence that shelling is continuing. Those with nowhere else to go are running low on food as aid agencies withdraw and hospitals struggle to cope with the numbers injured. Here, the Prime Minister was asked what his immigration bill being debated today would mean for Sudanese child refugees.
Will he therefore confirm that it would be his government's intention to detain and deport a child refugee who flees Sudan and comes to the United Kingdom?
Not something the Prime Minister wanted to answer.
This country has a proud record of compassionately supporting those who need our assistance. Just over the last few years, we have welcomed almost 500,000 vulnerable people to our country, including many children.
The government says the evacuation flights will continue while conditions allow. But the ceasefire is due to run out tomorrow. And with some families reporting difficulty getting to the airfield, they're desperate to know they won't be left stranded. Romilly Weeks, ITV News.
Let's take you to Stansted now and join our reporter Sangeeta Lal, where that flight with British people escaping Sudan is expected. And Sangeeta, it's expected to land within the hour, is that right?
Yeah, it is. And when it does, it'll land in a private terminal here where passengers will then be met by staff. And we're told 301 people have been evacuated so far, the majority of them British nationals, and another 3 flights are expected to land here today. Now, this evacuation process started yesterday after British diplomats were taken out of Sudan first. That's something criticised by Germany's foreign minister, who said that their evacuation plans included all nationals and diplomats. So here, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has said that that is something he defends. He said it was right to prioritise the diplomats because they were being targeted. Now the focus is on getting all British nationals and immediate family members who already have an existing UK entry clearance back here. And it is a huge operation involving more than 1,000 personnel from the RAF, potentially helping thousands of people get back here as the military races against time to bring people to safety before that ceasefire ends.
Sangeeta Lal, thank you very much. Our international affairs editor Raghi Omar is in the neighbouring country of Djibouti and joins me now. Raghi, what is the latest on efforts to get British nationals out? We know hundreds have made it out, but hundreds more are still stranded there.
Well, thousands more, according to the estimates. There are between a low of 2,000 and a maximum of 4,000. So we're only, completed a short amount of getting the people who are there out. Flights are continuing, obviously, to try and get the remaining Brits out. That depends on the ceasefire holding in Sudan itself. But I think effectively what it'll mean, if the ceasefire crumbles, is that Brits who remain there, who don't make it onto the flights, will have to make their own way out. And I think the best route is likely to be through Port Sudan, but that's a 2-day journey by road.
And the fragile ceasefire that you mentioned there, what chance it will hold, do you think?
Not very good. I mean, there were indications last night that there were sporadic clashes to suggest that the ceasefire was, to put it mildly, fragile. But the internal politics of Sudan points to one direction, which is that it is on the cusp of a full-blown civil war. Neither side wants to hold back in terms of going all out to win power. But how long that ceasefire maintains is really due to international pressure. And that international pressure will focus on getting the two sides to put a pause in the fighting so that the remaining expatriates can be taken out. But that's a shot in the dark, I think.
OK, Raghi Omar, thank you very much. Thank you. A getaway driver who helped the man who murdered Olivia Pratt-Corbell has been sentenced to 22 months in prison. Olivia was just 9 years old when she was shot and killed in her home last August. Paul Russell admitted driving the murderer Thomas Cashman away from the scene. Our reporter Anne O'Connor is at Liverpool Crown Court for us this lunchtime. Olivia's family were in court, Anne.
Yes, her mother Cheryl and her family were in court. She lowered her head and closed her eyes as she heard evidence about how Paul Russell had helped her daughter's murderer Thomas Cashman on the night of that shooting last August, driving him away from an address and moving a bag of the clothes that he'd been wearing. Now, Paul Russell didn't know that shooting had killed a schoolgirl. He later told police he was terrified of the reputation of drug dealer Thomas Cashman. His heart sank, his world fell apart, he said, when he got a phone call that night saying that Cashman had appeared at his house. Next day, he saw Thomas Cashman and he whispered to him, "Don't say nothing." But when Paul Russell realised that the victim of that shooting had been a 9-year-old schoolgirl, he's said to have vomited, contacted the police and met them 2 days later in a retail park, naming Thomas Cashman as the man they wanted. When he was charged with assisting an offender, he was told by police that there had been threats to his life. Now, he admitted that offence last October and appeared here today on a video link for sentencing because of those security concerns. His defence barrister said he is the epitome of remorse and what he's done will be a source of shame to his dying day. The judge, Mrs Justice Yip, sentencing him to that 22 months imprisonment, said he'd made a disastrous decision, but she gave him a reduced sentence because he had broken the silence around the shooting. He could be released as early as September because of the time he spent in custody.
Anne O'Connor, thank you very much. Thank you. The coroner investigating the deaths of 27 patients who were treated by the jailed breast surgeon Ian Patterson confirmed today the inquest will be held in the autumn of next year. The disgraced doctor was jailed for 20 years in 2017 for carrying out unnecessary operations on private patients, some of whom didn't have cancer. New research out today suggests that people living with disabilities are still facing a huge spike in living costs. The charity Scope claims some are paying more than £10,000 a year more each year to achieve the same standard of living as non-disabled households. For many people, this means having to rely on family and friends for help and a huge loss of independence. Layla Hayes has this report.
Shani Danda has a genetic condition, which means she has to use a wheelchair. She says her disability means everything costs her more.
I really struggle to use public transport because it's not designed for people like me. I have to pay a lot of money for travel insurance, for specialist insurance, for my wheelchair. Just every bit of my life costs so much more, and it's not fair. I shouldn't have to pay more to try and live the same lives as non-disabled people.
On average, households with at least one disabled adult or child need an extra £975 a month to have the same standard of living as non-disabled households. And when there are two disabled adults, the average extra costs rise to more than £1,200 a month. The extra costs include things like specialist equipment, mobility aids and higher energy costs. Hannah Deacon writes a blog about her disability and says the rise in energy bills has hit her hard.
My bed, I have an electric bed which needs to be on 24/7. I have an air mattress, again, it needs to be on 24/7. My power chair needs to be charged 12 hours a night.
Today's report says the rising cost of living has increased the financial challenges for disabled people.
We know that lots of households are in poverty, but at the end of the day what we're seeing is a benefit system that isn't adequate enough, a welfare system that isn't supporting people, and this needs to now be a political priority.
The government says the welfare system provides a strong safety net for people with disabilities. But Shani says they continue to face extra costs and would like more help. Layla Hayes, ITV News.
The Bank of England's chief economist has been told he is astonishingly out of touch for saying people in the UK are reluctant to accept that they are worse off. Hugh Pill was speaking on an American podcast when he said if people don't accept they are poorer, then prices will keep rising. His comments have been criticised by small businesses and unions. Our economic editor, Joel Hills, is at the Bank of England. Joel, talk us through exactly what he said and the reaction to it.
Well, I don't think Hugh Pill was saying anything very different to what the Bank of England has been saying repeatedly in the last 15 months or so. He did, though, use language that was simpler and clearer to the jargon that we're used to from economists. He was trying to explain why interest rates have risen so aggressively and what can be done to ensure this very painful period of high inflation, as that report was just been stating, can be as short-lived as possible. The point he was trying to make is the UK is vulnerable because we are a net importer of energy. That is to say, we buy in more energy from the rest of the world than we sell to it. It means that inevitably the surge in gas prices has left us feeling poorer. This is an inevitable truth, a painful truth that he argues we need to accept. Instead, he says there's some evidence that some companies have been raising their prices, partly to protect their profits, partly to fund more generous pay rises to staff. He said these reactions were perfectly natural, but were also self-defeating defeating because they risked triggering another round of inflation.
You don't need to be much of an economist to realise if what you're buying has gone up a lot relative to what you're selling, you're going to be worse off. So somehow in the UK, someone needs to accept that they're worse off and stop trying to maintain their real spending power by bidding up prices, whether higher wages or passing the energy costs through onto customers, etc. And what we're facing now is that reluctance to accept that, yes, we're all worse off and we all have to take our share, to try and pass that cost onto one of our compatriots.
Hugh Pill argues that this game of what he called pass the parcel is going on, and it's a game that the Bank of England cannot unfortunately tolerate. The reaction, his comments inevitably have been unpopular. The Federation of Small Businesses says he's out of touch. The GMB union calls this absolutely outrageous. The TUC echoed that comment. To be clear though, he did not say that people should not get a pay rise. He simply said that inflation busting pay rises are dangerous.
Joel, thank you very much. Thank you. In the last half an hour, it has been announced that the MP Andrew Bridgen has been expelled from the Conservative Party for comparing COVID vaccines to the Holocaust and for a breach of lobby rules. The MP for North West Leicestershire had the Tory whip removed in January. A party spokesperson said Mr Bridgen was expelled from the Conservative Party on the 12th of April following the recommendation of a disciplinary panel. He has 28 days to appeal. This afternoon we'll hear whether the Royal College of Midwives has voted to accept the government's pay offer of a 5% rise and a one-off bonus of £1,000. If they don't accept, strike action in England could follow. And the government has met its 2019 manifesto pledge for hiring 20,000 new police officers across England and Wales within 3 years. In some areas, forces have exceeded the target. The Metropolitan Police was the only force to miss the recruitment target. It is 1,000 officers short. Ed Sheeran has appeared in a court in New York on the first day of a copyright trial. He has denied his 2014 Grammy Award-winning track, Thinking Out Loud, copied Marvin Gaye's classic, Let's Get It On. The family of Gaye's co-writer, Ed Townsend, are suing Sheeran, his record label and publisher for $100 million. Charlie Frost reports.
It was clear as they entered court, in this battle of the tracks, both sides meant business.
Hey, what you gonna say today?
Like Marvin Gaye sang, let's get it on.
Ed is no stranger to defending his music, but this time it's not a relatively unknown song he's accused of stealing. It's argued this
People fall in love in mysterious ways.
His 2014 Grammy Award-winning hit, Thinking Out Loud, sounds like this.
Let's get it on. That's love, baby.
Marvin Gaye's iconic Let's Get It On, which came out more than 40 years earlier.
Let's get it on.
The soul classic was co-written by Ed Townsend, and it's his family that are suing Sheeran, his record label and publisher, for $100 million.
And I'm here for justice, protecting my father's intellectual properties, and all I'm expecting is his name to be honored and his work and his legacy.
Let's get it on.
Inside the court, their lawyer argued this video of Sheeran performing a mashup of both songs at a concert amounts to a smoking gun confession. But testifying, Sheeran said he sometimes mixed songs together with similar chords at his gigs, adding, "If I had done what you're accusing me of doing, I'd be quite an idiot to stand on a stage in front of 20,000 people and do that." His lawyer said whilst the songs share versions of similar chord progressions, these are basic musical building blocks which no artist can monopolise. The trial is expected to last at least a week. Charlie Frost, ITV News.
Finally, this lunchtime, a royal row over the coronation concert. Thousands of people were delighted to receive an email congratulating them on getting tickets to attend the star-studded event at Windsor Castle on May the 7th. But the invite was actually only letting people queue up for the potential of going. As Faye Barker reports, that's left many having their hopes dashed.
Kevin Martin wanted to take his wife to the coronation concert to celebrate their 46th anniversary. As he headed to an oncology appointment yesterday, he was delighted to receive an email suggesting he had a pair of tickets. But when he later went back to claim them, they'd gone.
I've got cancer, which is terminal, which is by the by. But I thought, what a great thing to be able to go and do before anything else happens. And then, 3 hours later, it was like I almost felt like I'd been robbed. To be told, I think it's like being told you won the lottery and then saying you haven't.
Others have also shared online their frustrations after receiving the email from Ticketmaster. It does mention tickets are being offered on a first-come, first-served basis, but also that people have until April the 27th to claim them. However, like Kevin, many missed out. The Windsor Castle concert is one of the highlights of the coronation weekend. Headline acts include Take That, along with Katy Perry and Lionel Richie. 5,000 pairs of tickets were in the public ballot. Released in batches, the last tickets were made available yesterday. In a statement, Ticketmaster said, everyone who was successful in the 2 main ballot rounds was offered a guaranteed pair of tickets. Any unclaimed tickets were released on a first-come, first-served basis to those who had previously applied to the ballot. These inevitably went very quickly. The concert is being televised, but this is little comfort for those who thought, for a moment, they'd be there in person. Faye Barker, ITV News.
That's it this lunchtime. Mary's here with the ITV Evening News at 6:30 from me. Bye-bye.